We want to restore the Department of Justice to an institution that focuses on fighting law and order.
And I think they've been doing a pretty good job of that. We used to have sort of a little bit of law and order. That's done. We're done with it. Trump is individually above the law. Now his entire administration is above the law and also order. That's done. I barely remember what order looks like. Checks and balances. All of that is dead. And you know that. It's happened in many different ways over the last couple of months. But the most recent one is an ongoing fight between Donald Trump, the Department of Justice, and judges who've been providing some very limited checks and pushback on the mass deportation program. So we have this ongoing battle right now where the DOJ is in court and they are basically claiming that they don't have to follow and did not follow a judge's order to stop a limited number of deportation flights. And some of this has to do with, we talked about last week on the show, Donald Trump's invocation of the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Imagine it, 1798. Anyway, so he's now saying, I don't have to have any hearings whatsoever. I can deport people, I can strip away green cards, I can do literally anything I want, deport people for whatever reason, because we're at war. And how could anyone dispute that? I mean, clearly there's a war going on, so you can do whatever you want. And I know some people are gonna be like, well, authoritarian leaders always start a fake war to justify what they do, but it's probably not that in this case. It's probably something else that he's doing. But anyway, so you have these flights and you have a judge saying that you can't do it without a hearing. And if any of these flights are currently in the air, you have to turn them around and they have to come back. And I'm a judge, that's how it works. It's not the end of the process. There's multiple phases and sometimes the administration gets what they want and sometimes they don't. That happens under Republicans and Democrats. But in this case, that didn't happen. Trump just did the deportations. The planes that were already in the air continued in the air and then landed not back here where they were supposed to. And more of them just took off and they basically told the judge to sit and spin. That's what they did. And so now the Trump administration has sort of implied that, no, it was that the order wasn't written yet and we don't have to follow it if it's just a verbal order, which is not a thing. We can't hear you, judge. We can't hear you. That's not how this works literally at all. And by the way, also that's a lie. A New York Times review of the flight data showed that none of the planes in question landed in El Salvador before the judge's order, and that one of them didn't even leave American soil until after the written order was posted online. So that's literally not even true. Even if it were true, it wouldn't actually mean what they say it means, but also, as with so many things in the Trump administration, it's also not true. And you can see sort of, we have a little map here from the New York Times on the actual timeline of when things happened, when the flights took off and all of that. Now, again, they are arguing in the DOJ because the DOJ is no longer a bastion of anything even approaching like the quest for justice. It's literally Donald Trump's personal lawyers doing law for Trump personally. They say that his decision wasn't complete until it was codified in written form, which is again, not a thing. And I don't know if the judges are just, the lawyers are telling the lies that Trump tells them to lie, or they literally don't know. He's had plenty of lawyers in the past, Alina Habba, that don't seem to know the most basic. They don't have like the sort of experience you'd expect a lawyer to have if they'd like casually viewed a few seasons of Suits. So maybe they literally don't know. But also, they're not even basically playing ball anymore. One of the lawyers repeatedly refused to answer questions from a federal judge trying to determine whether the White House violated a court order when it did some of these deportations. This is Abhishek Kambli. Kambli said he was authorized to provide only limited information because of national security concerns. The judge directed the government to provide more information on the flights by noon on Tuesday, which is now, I think, Eastern time. But I love that he's just like, no, judge, I'm not gonna tell you. What? That's not a thing. He's a judge. He's involved in national security stuff. That's how that works. And so, look, Tory, I'm joking around. It's a defense mechanism that I have, but we are really in dangerous territory when Donald Trump is being given specific orders from judges to do specific things, and he and his lawyers are saying we just don't have to do that. What do you make of all this?
I feel Stephen Miller's presence all over the place when I hear this. This brings me into something that I was reading about in the New York Times recently. Jamel Bowie put a really great article on this, John, and it's called Constitutional Rot. And I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's legal scholars, Balkin and Sam Levinson came up with this in 2009. And it's not an outright constitutional crisis that we're having where you're just ignoring the Constitution. And it's not like we're ignoring constitutional orders yet, but we're at that place where the degradation of the checks and balances, like you said, and we're holding on with like dental floss here with like checks and balances. The only check that we had are those judges. That was it. That's all we got when he does these crazy things. And if that dental floss starts to decay and fray, then we have the monarch of Trump, really. We have no ends, no checks, no balances, no nothing. So what I see is this. Stephen Miller is like a dog, and I love dogs. I love dogs. Who doesn't love dogs? But sometimes dogs will push and test the limit. Can I go this way? Can I go farther? How far can I go? And at this point, we're seeing a direct renunciation of a judge's order in a way that's like not only nah, we're making up written orders and we're taking off in international waters as excuses. So at this point, the judge did admonish the DOJ and Trump saying like, now you need written orders. It's gotta be more than that. If he continually goes against judges' orders, I'd like to see Congress maybe step up. Like, where are the Democrats to step up and say, if you're gonna go against an actual judicial order, then we're gonna start impeachment processes as the checks and balances are supposed to go. Because at this point, we're just rotting. We're allowing things to happen. Congress allowed Musk to cut the AIDS without really doing anything. January 6th, kind of thrown under the rug. It's this, I can't get the energy up to stop this constitutional degradation. And that's Stephen Miller's like dream. I mean, that's really his dream. And he's the Slytherin of all Slytherins.
Exactly, of the original sort. Yeah, not the reformed sort that we would find more compelling, ripe with more dramatic possibility. But anyway, yeah, that's interesting. I think it's sort of a mix of those two things. I think there are some things that are sort of that continuing just destruction of norms and the way things are supposed to go that we had the first time. And then I think there's also just constitutional lines that are just being routinely crossed.
Correct.
A habitual constitutional line stepper, as Dave Chappelle once said. And so I think we're seeing both of those. Like, and just as a thought experiment for MAGA, which won't actually engage in those. So let's say, hypothetically, it's Joe Biden's administration, and he's like, oh dear God, there's terrible things happening in Gaza and Syria, and we need to help these people out. So we're gonna bring in more refugees. And I've told them to load people up on planes and bring them on in. They're gonna be landing in Houston, they're gonna be landing in Miami or whatever. And then a judge was like, well, hold up a second, buddy. You don't take off. And if any of those planes are in the air, you gotta turn them around. And Karine Jean-Pierre was like, nuh-uh, you didn't write it down yet. I'm sure Fox News would be like, she got us.
Yeah, that's right.
She's got a point on that. Or if, Biden was like, okay, so the written order is up, but auto pen, I think the judge might have signed it with auto pen. I'm sure Sean Hannity would be like, I really want to push back against this, but they've checked all their boxes. No, of course they wouldn't. And so this isn't tenable. You said you want to see Congress act. Please, Tory, you seem like a very nice person. Don't hold your breath for that.
No.
Because it doesn't seem like they're going to.
No, there's silence.
Yeah, there's so many great places where, I don't know, Chuck Schumer could do something, literally anything, but he doesn't really seem up to it. Thanks for watching our video. Did you know that you can support our show by becoming a subscriber? Just click the subscribe button and also ring the bell so that you get notifications when we're live or when we post new content.